Hi, welcome to Memory Chips Podcast. I am Ann Wyszynski, and I have a collection of potato chip bags from around the world. And every so often, I go through this collection, and a certain bag or bags will bring up memories of people, places, ideas, and I really want to share these with you. So if you please subscribe, you will never miss a bag. My relationship with Sevinç Gürmen Hall started with a hilarious miscommunication, which apparently, judging by this episode, it continues to this day, as I attempted to chat with her via a really sketchy connection at 5 a.m. Eastern Time, while she suffered from a cold, or maybe COVID, in Istanbul. But Sevinç is a phenom who is a single mom of a crazy 3-year-old and who is probably best known, not the 3-year-old, but Sevinç, as the founder of the Joy of Pole dance / mobility / acrobatic studio, and also one of the first and maybe only contestant competing the skill of pole dancing on Turkey's Got Talent, which caused a bit of an uproar at the time. It also led to a number of media outlets and reporters contacting Sevinç because they were curious about how something like pole dance works in a society where open expressions of female sexiness and semi-nudity are pretty frowned upon. And in the show notes, you can find links to those articles and to Sevinç's performance videos and writings. But in this episode, we reopen that conversation with a little more talk about inclusivity in the pole community and how to build the community you want. Aside from Sevinç and I having what seems to be a persistent curiosity and enthusiasm about the same things throughout our separate life paths, we also have experienced a strange and baffling small world synchronicity that keeps us locked in perpetual friendship. And you'll hear about that in the context of one potato chip flavor, Burger King hamburger, at the end of this episode. And at the beginning of the episode, we're going to start with the other flavor. World Cheese's Feta and red pepper flavor.
And that looks like my former last name.
Yeah, your former last name, which is
Gürmen.
Gürmen, and this says Gourmet.
Yeah.
That's why I took it, which means gourmet flavor masters, world cheeses.
I don't.
But this one I liked because it was red, and that's a good color for you. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it has changed over the years. Right now, my only mission is to surround myself with like-minded people and be happy and enjoy teaching. Or aerials or acrobatic dance skills. That's what I have gotten into after I have given birth, and I kind of combined floor acrobatics with pole and created this class which you can do without getting mostly naked. So you wear pants and like long sleeves. It's perfect for winter time. Yeah, but it's still like flowy and it's acrobatic, and people who are interested in acrobatic stuff enjoy it very much.
Yeah, great.
So much fun, by the way. I think the funnest times that our studio has was over there with limited resources and shady circumstances.
Yeah. You said that your mission, your goal now is to surround yourself with like-minded people, which it seemed like from the very beginning that was it. It seemed like your goal there wasn't so much to teach pole. I mean, I know you were like really passionate about pole, but you really were trying to like attract people that you I'm not saying you're picky about who was there, but it seemed like you were trying to make a community around it more so than like make sure that everybody was like a fantastic pole dancer. Is that I have bugged?
Yeah. I mean, it was. I wanted to build a community. I think I'm still in the same headspace, but I'm just like, back then I was more idealist. Like, I wanted to be able to create a space for Turkish women to practice the sisterhood that we can as women practice among us, and like support each other instead of be rivals, like as it was taught to us when we were kids here growing up. Like, any other woman is your enemy, and like they will always take whatever you have. Culture, I wanted to break it, and I wanted to show women that they can trust each other and should trust each other and should support each other, because we are the only one who can understand each other. But that didn't go quite as I was imagining it.
So let's talk about when we met doing circus, because I think that's kind of a funny story about, like, I had moved to Turkey. I was running the art space, but I was teaching, aerials just kind of like on the side because we had the space to do it. And I was trying to find out what was going on in Istanbul in regards to circus, just so that I could become part of a community or see what was there. And you were teaching a workshop. And then I contacted you.
I was teaching a workshop. And
yeah, it was a little bit a misunderstanding. Yeah. I wrote you an email in Turkish.
Yeah, you wrote me in Turkish. I didn't even understand you were American. And later I was like, why didn't she write me in English then?
Because I didn't know if you spoke English. Because the workshop, the listing for the workshop that I found was in Turkish. So I was like, well, maybe she doesn't speak. I mean, why would you assume that everybody speaks English? I had met people in Turkey, comedians. Like, there was a whole bunch of actors and comedians that I was friends with, like through Galata Perform and stuff like that. And none of them spoke English. I went to a stand-up comedy show, and it was like 5 comedians. And I thought, well, at least one of them will speak. None of them spoke English. And it was like, I sat through a whole comedy show in Turkish, which, besides the fact that I couldn't understand Turkish, I mean, I could sort of understand it, but I couldn't understand it well enough to get the references. Like, all the comedy was like really political, and also like referenced things that I would have no idea what they were talking about, because I don't know anything about like recent Turkish political history or things like that. So they were like referencing people and things, and then they were speaking really fast in Turkish, and everyone's like laughing. And I was like, how do I leave without being rude?
Oh my God. Yeah, right. I guess it was like, I think around me, there's very, like, rarely I meet a person who doesn't speak English. So that's why I kind of assume that most people do, especially the young people.
So I wrote you that email, and then, so what was it that you thought when you read it? Like, I had contacted you because I was going to say, like, I'm trying to find like other people that are teaching and just like see what's going on here. And I wanted to come to your thing, but it didn't sound like that when I wrote it, I guess.
Oh yeah, it sounded like you wanted to teach the workshop, like co-host it.
Hey, can I come in
a way that you would be helping me, like in a way that you would be the head teacher or something? It was like, and as I read it, I was like, what? Would anyone be okay with this? I asked other people, and was like, do you think it means what it means? It's like, is she trying to say something else?
Well, I know. I just was, all I was saying was, I'm trying to find out who else is doing what I'm doing in town, and I would like to learn about what you're doing. You, we kind of worked together a little bit on aerial stuff, and then you went to Australia right? And
Yes,
started
I
doing
did.
pole,
I did
right?
go to Australia. Uh-huh. And
Yeah.
I started, I think we worked on the trapeze for a year with you before I went to Australia, wasn't it? Because I got my trapeze from Gavin, who was in Australia, who then I went there to work for, to learn about rigging and manufacturing of apparatuses. And then when I get there, no one was doing static trapeze and no one was doing like the kind of silks that I liked. And I was kind of growing away from silks at that moment anyway. And there was only Chinese pole option available. And somebody just told me, like, okay, why don't you do this thing? And I was like, okay, what can I do on the pole? And then started working with the guy who was over there in the circus center. And I loved it so much that I just wanted to do more, like once in every 2 weeks, because there wasn't a regular class. So we were like meeting once in every 2 weeks, and it just wasn't enough for me. I wanted to do more. And I just wrote to Google, and my Googling skills also have improved in the later years. But back then, it was really bad. So I just wrote pole, Sydney. That's it. To be able to find like a pole in Sydney. And of course, the first one that popped up was Bobby's Studio, like the sexiest style of pole dance. So I just clicked that and I enrolled for 10 classes. Didn't even check, like didn't even think like, oh, this says pole dance. So I was assuming it would be contemporary dance. The website is a little bit pink, but maybe it's their taste. So I was just not aware at all. And then I just started the sexy style pole dance. It was really awkward at first. It was like the most awkward times of my existence, maybe. But then after I was like in there, and every kind of woman and man and non-binary person was friends, like in those classes they were having fun, and there was like such a community sense. I don't think it's like that in Australia either. Like pole world, with the influence of social media, particularly Instagram, I think has been corrupted. Like back then, pole was also a new thing to do for normal people in Australia. So it was just very new, and everyone was so excited. Everyone started with very pure intentions. So it was just so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw that, and I just wanted to bring it back to the country.
Right. So it was more about, I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is that it was more about you, because you said that you were uncomfortable with the sexy part of it. Because I know that you did start with Chinese pole, which Chinese pole is a more like athletic, acrobatic form of it. And then pole dance was more of a dancey, sexy thing. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, is because it surprised me that you got into that, because you were so much yourself, and yourself wasn't like, I'm going to wear these like hot pants and like dance around in platform shoes like that. And so it was really interesting to me that you kind of transformed into that. But it sounds like it was not so much because you were so attracted to that style, but more that maybe that, yeah, you liked that community of people in Australia. And
yeah, I did.
And you wanted to bring that back to Turkey, the community, not just the pole dancing.
Yeah, the pole was kind of the excuse. The idea behind it was to bring the community, but pole does work really well in that regard, because I think I have thought a lot about it over the years, because maybe the fact that you kind of have to be half naked around people that you don't know really well at first when you started the class helps you to bring up the vulnerability and trust those people, and like see your body do cool things without having to cover it up with other accessories and nakedness, not necessarily feminine style clothes, but being able to like having to be half naked helps a lot in terms of creating this community, that close bonds with people. Like in Turkey, even if you go to a gym locker room, a women's locker room, they don't walk around naked or half naked. In a pole studio, people would, and that wouldn't be weird. And during, like, starting there, even before the class, to be able to go to a pole studio, see women like just naked and talking about their daily lives and having fun, is able to open up that kind of communication between people. That's what I realized. And also being able to do sexy moves like body rolls or other stuff, like touching yourself amongst other women and looking to a mirror and like seeing yourself accomplish, like get out of those comfort zones and be that with people, creates a very strong energy in class. That's what I also liked about it. Like, it wasn't like I was interested in the lingerie or the high heels. It was, and it still is, by the way, interesting for me to explore because it's a different way of being. But I just was not interested in the visual of it. It's the idea, like, to be able to like be in a room and release like whatever sensuality you have in you, guided by someone with other people, is really empowering.
So you're talking about women. You keep referring to other women. So do you have any men or non-binary people in your classes there, or is it all women?
We do have one non-binary and one man, who also sometimes, well, he's gender fluid, so sometimes he is a man and sometimes he is non-binary and sometimes he just comes with heels. So.
Okay.
But we do refer to him as a he, and the other is just a they.
Yeah.
So is also.
Do they feel included in this situation? And
no, they feel very included, and we actually talk about this a lot. I think now that I am separated from the other people and what I call the toxic gossip culture, because I did change the name of my studio. I got separated from my former partner and everybody who I worked with previously. Now I'm working with different people, different instructors. And I just wanted to get back to being able to accept other people by who they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I did realize that to be able to create and continue a space like this, at least the teachers have to be naturally in that state. Like, it cannot be just me and like guiding them through this process and they're copying me. They have to internally be that person. So that's why I pick and choose now with the people that I'm going to work with. And as the trainers are also in this mentality, we started to be able to attract non-binary people and men who are open to, I don't know, researches about themselves and just come here and dance. We do host like jams and parties who are open to also men, and men do, even though they're not regular students, they come and like join in our twerking or body roll little workshop within the jam, and they play around the pole and they feel completely safe in that. So I think we have been able to manage to bring back that inclusive vibe.
There's this impression about gender roles in Turkey, as Turkey is like a predominantly Muslim country, and people have an idea in their heads about like, what's allowed for women, what's allowed for, gender and things. These gender roles are not as strict as people want to think they are from outside of Turkey. Do you see that, or do you...
I don't know. I think, yes, it might be because you're in an art area, artsy people, but it is very strict in amongst normal people, schools, for example,
right,
or in government offices and stuff. Like, it is very, very strict. Like I grew up, people asking me around when I was 15, when I am going to start wearing makeup, because it's a normal, accepted level of being a woman. Like you start getting your period, your boobs like start to show, and you start wearing makeup and like put on nail polish and, you know, stuff like that. And I still don't put on makeup, but there is an expectation of women to put on makeup and do their nails or like wear high heels and appropriate clothing.
You know, for people who are listening that haven't seen your you know, any of your videos or anything, is that, you know, when you do photo shoots or like, you know, performances, you put on makeup, which is kind of, you know, a transformative thing. I think it's really interesting that it's like your look is very...
It's kind of androgynous.
Yeah, it's androgynous. The thing is that, so you said it when you were 15, everyone asked you when you were going to put on makeup, but you obviously, there was room for you. And maybe it's just because of, you know, yeah, the people that you hang out with, who your family is, you know, that kind of thing, that it's okay. You were given permission to kind of be that way, because you've been quite successful in, you know, building your business and building your studios, and you were, you know, you competed on Turkey's Got Talent and with your style, and people loved it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, do you think that like entertainers have a pass to kind of not conform to?
Or maybe is it the other way around? Like, because I was, as a kid, even when I was like a toddler, I was not the conformist kind of person. Like I always resisted any idea that was given to me, and I just didn't want to do that. And when my mom was expecting something for me to do, it was only natural for me to do the opposite. Like I was riding a motorcycle. I worked in a motorcycle store, for God's sake. How many like female identified people in Turkey could say that? Like I worked in a motorcycle shop as a mechanic, and it was just my way of like trying to exist in a world that didn't accept me as I am. And I think it kind of reflects in my performances. Even when I create a sexy performance, I like it to be weird. Like I enjoy having a scary vibe and still sexy. Like, because like every time anyone watches my performances, especially sexy performances, they just tell me it was so dark, but it was also sexy. I don't know, like I wouldn't think of myself liking this kind of performance, but it was so cool. So it was like, it's not even the sexy style that I have is not the normal and expected kind of like, and this is with air quotes, like expected kind of performance.
Right.
So I think it's kind of like your character develops your performance persona, and your performance persona gives you the right to be a certain kind of character.
Right. Sevinç talks about being a mom and its lessons, but in order for her to have become a mom, there was a dad, and that dad is named Elliot Hall. And while he just happens to be from where I live, I met him through Sevinç, who I met 15 years ago in Turkey. Sevinç now has a Turkish-American child, and I felt that this potato chip bag in particular was a good representation of that coincidence. Ruffles Burger King flavor. So it's a hamburger chips with Burger King logo on it. I got these in Turkey, the bags in Turkish, but which I thought is hilarious because like of all like like Turkish cuisine is so amazing, and that they would make potato chips in Burger King flavor was funny to me. But the other reason why I chose this Turkish Burger King bag was because of your relationship to the state, which was a really weird like development in our friendship. And so this is like an American thing in Turkey.
Yeah.
The funny thing about this situation is like, so Sevinç and I met in Istanbul from that whole fiasco of me writing to her, telling her I was going to teach her class. But then we became friends and we stayed friends, and like, you know, our paths kind of, you know, they're sort of like, we're kind of in the same field. We were interested in the same things. And then I moved, you know, to Sweden, and then I moved back here. And then at some point, Sevinç was like, I'm in the States. So it turns out that Sevinç was at parkour workshop. What, you tell the story.
I think, yeah. I mean, I met Ella through a parkour workshop, and then when I came back, it was because of a mobility teacher training program. I think it was a Farsi certification program that I was here for, and then I went to see more of Ella, and then we started getting involved. Then somehow we realized, and I always like just message you when I'm in the US to see if you're over there, especially since you completely moved out of Turkey. And then realized we were kind of in the same state. I mean, it's close by.
I said something about my friend Sevinç is here, and she's with some guy, and I told them his name, and they were like, "That's our teacher. That was our parkour teacher here." And it was my nephew's here, where it turns out that the guy that you were with was from this rural area. But everybody knew this guy around here, and actually I had heard of him before, but never registered because it didn't have anything to do with me. And so then later it found out. So how does that happen? Like, my friend in Turkey hooks up with somebody who, like,
it is just, how would you, I mean, it's still unbelievable. Life does not surprise me so much anymore, but that was one of the times that I was like actually surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, that was so weird. It was just like, wait, what? I don't understand. Like, it was so hard to register too. I was like, wait, you've met her? Because, yeah, we were talking about, I said something, my friend Sevinç is here, blah, blah, blah. I want to see her. And they're like, oh, is she's like, oh, I met somebody named Sevinç from Turkey. Is that Ellet's girlfriend? And I was like, what? And then it was a very strange thing. So now, well, I'm glad, because now you have a child, and
yeah.
The grandparents of the child live here. So that means that hopefully you'll come here occasionally. As a closer, I asked Sevinç if she could communicate what she felt was the most important thing to focus on to create the kind of community or society that she envisioned.
Realize their own biases in everything, like in conversation, in business, in relationships, because if you're able to really see our biases and realize that we are half responsible for everything that happens around us, then the world and businesses and living in Turkey as a female identified person, everything could be much better. Really love for everyone to, it does require a lot of work for me. I think everyone will be able to like work it out differently, but for me, like, having a kid did wonders for it, to be honest. Like, because when you have a kid, you don't have any other options than to face your own biases and the dark sides and things you don't want to deal with. It's like in your face every day, at least a couple of times. So yeah, I didn't plan for it, but like, at least I'm making good use of it right now. Let's say. First it was hard, but like, being able to accept it is the first part. Like, see that, and it's like, I think we just hold on to our selective identities too much. Like the idea of this is me or this is not me too much, that we just don't see the detailed parts of ourselves, because we can be everything. Like there's everything in us. We just pick and choose like different things to hold on to, and then it becomes just really hard to see everything else.
Yeah.
At least that was how it felt for me, because it was like I feel like I have left the whole identity behind since becoming a mom, and now I just look at that person as a very limited person. But he was so sure of himself, for sure.
Thanks for listening, and if you have any questions or comments about what you heard today, please post them to the review section of your podcast player. So if you use Apple Podcasts, you click on the show thumbnail and scroll down to leave a review. And then whatever happens after that is up to you, but hopefully it's nice. You can also leave posts on Instagram at @MemoryChipsPodcast.